When I went to law school, we were required to wear hose, pantyhose, closed-toed shoes, and we were told that for jury trial, we should always wear a skirt or a long, preferably below your knees, because you never know who's going to be on your jury panel. And there are some individuals who find that pants are not respectable on a woman. I think we're way past that now. And of course, I wear pantsuits all the time in hearings. Mostly that's what I wear. But I do tell people that, watch these lawyer shows and see these young kids like, I can't think of what some of the shows are. They're probably old now, Boston Legal or Suits or
Ally McBeal was famous for the short
Ally
skirt.
McBeal, right? I tell young attorneys, I say there is a direct inverse correlation, another one, to how high an attorney's heel is and how much experience she has in the courtroom.
Welcome to the Texas Lawyer Podcast, where we share stories from those who choose to practice law in the great state of Texas. I'm your host, Cheryl McGirr, and today we're sitting down with a lawyer who went from working in the hair and makeup movie industry to battling some of the toughest cases in Central Texas today. Today, we're talking with Lisa Hoing. Welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're getting to sit down with you. You have such an interesting story, and I'm so excited to share it with our listeners. Please start just telling me about your life and what did that look like before practicing law ever came into your heart and mind?
I've had multiple careers in my life. I had a full ride acting scholarship to go to Southern Utah University. And while I was down there, I had a double major, theater and biology. And while I was down there, I fell in love with the art of makeup and hair. And so I studied under a fantastic makeup and hair artist, Larry Pennington, and apprenticed under him. And then went out on my own and joined up with the Utah Film Commission, and then worked primarily doing commercials, movies, all sorts of little things here and there. And so I started out doing that. Then I decided to teach theater to kids. And so I went back to school and got my undergraduate degree in elementary education and started teaching my fourth grade class in 1996. Then went to sixth, seventh, and eighth grades, and I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. You couldn't pay me enough money to do that anymore.
And so what made you think, I'll become a lawyer?
Well, two things happened. First, I had a horrible landlord when I was a teacher, and I was living out in the middle of nowhere. And he would not fix things on the house. He wouldn't repair anything. So I left, and there was an illegal lockout. So I sued him. And I did that through an attorney. I had a good time doing that. And I wasn't happy as a teacher. And so my dad said to me, well, I think you should be a lawyer. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer, and then I can live vicariously through you. And I thought, well, it's nowhere but up. So what the heck? Let's give it a try. That's what pointed me in that direction.
Yeah. And so what was so you were teaching at the time you decided you wanted to try applying for law school?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, the first thing I had to do was start preparing for the LSAT. And that was completely a different type of thinking than I was used to thinking. In education, we are taught to see things very holistically and very globally. Everybody shares and everybody gets together and helps. It's a very communal type of scholarship. But in law, it is quite the opposite. It's very logical, very fact-based. And so I had to begin thinking like that for purposes of studying for the LSAT. I did that for a year on my own, and then I took the LSAT. And then and in that time, and my understanding is it's changed today. My understanding is that you can now take the LSAT multiple times, and they no longer average in the test scores. They just take your highest. But when I took the LSAT, probably when you took it, Cheryl, it was a strategy issue that you had to choose where you had to choose what your best was. So you had to be self, basically metacognitive. You had to be self-aware to determine whether you were actually performing at your best. Because if you took the test a second time and you scored lower, then those two scores were averaged together. So you had to make that strategic decision. My understanding is they don't have to do that anymore, which is a real shame because I think it's important step on learning how to become an attorney. Then I applied to several different universities, and I received an offer from the University of Nebraska. They had a joint psych law program I was interested in. I thought I would like to pursue being a jury consultant. And they had a PhD program in 5 years where you could get your JD, your Juris Doctorate, and your PhD in psychology at the same time. And so I applied to that, and they lost my application. And so they said, don't worry about it, though. You can't start the psychology portion of it until the second year anyhow. But after the first year of law school, I was just like, no, yeah, I'll be lucky to get through this first year. So we're not doing that. We're just going to go straight to law school.
What were some of the challenges you faced in law school early on?
I think, once again, it came back to that way of thinking. I was also a non-traditional student in that I didn't go straight from college directly to law school like a lot of the younger folks did. I had a career, two before I went. And so my study habits were nowhere near what the study habits the kids who were just leaving school had. And additionally, I didn't think like a lawyer. I thought like a teacher because I'd been trained to think like a teacher. And so that was a real struggle for me. I never really understood what they wanted from me up until I actually started practicing law.
I think that story is kind of common to a lot of attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
So you graduated from the University of Nebraska Law School. Was that what it was called?
Yes, and I want to share a story with you about my progress through the University of Nebraska.
Sure.
That I think is really important if you're thinking about becoming an attorney or you're wondering if you could fit in. It is a lot of hard work, obviously, and it is a good old boys club in that it is academic hazing, essentially. And so they're trying to weed out as many people as possible through the hazing, and so that they're left with the people who are going to be able to take on some really serious issues, whether that's somebody spending their life in prison or the death penalty or billion-dollar business transactions. So, like I said, I the first year I had no idea what they wanted from me. And I was on probation at the end of my first year for grades because we only had one test a semester, which is typical. And that test is an essay, and you have 4 hours to do like 2 or 3 questions on an essay. And I just didn't understand what they wanted from me. So at the end of the first year, I was so low in my class rank. I think we had maybe 160, 165 members of our class, and I was so low that I was placed on academic probation. So the second year, we were able to choose a couple of classes of our own liking. The first year, you're not allowed to do that. The second year, they gave you about half the classes were required, the other half you could choose. So what I did was they posted your grade along with the rest of your classmates on a paper outside of the door to the classroom at the end of the semester. And it was by your social security number. So it wasn't your name. And then at the very bottom, they had the average of that class. And so what I did was I went around and looked at all of the papers that were the documents that had the averages of the classes. And I signed up for all of the classes that had the highest averages. That way I knew I'd be able to raise my GPA in order to get off of academic probation. And so that strategy worked out very well. And I was able, first year is weighted twice as heavy as the rest of them. So it was very difficult to pull myself up, but I was able to be right in the middle of the class by the time I graduated.
Well, that's great. That really shows that how hard you worked with that first year being weighted so heavily.
Yeah.
So the challenge of learning to think like a lawyer, you said that really happened when you went into practice. Where did you go into practice initially?
So I was first hired actually before I graduated. I had completed the litigation skills track, both civil and criminal, which are senior supervised licenses, which means that I was eligible to practice law with a supervising attorney. And I did that both on the civil side and the criminal side. So I had a little bit of criminal experience at the Lincoln, Nebraska District Attorney's Office. And I was hired before I graduated in a little community called Dawson County in the middle of Nebraska, right on I-80. Very small district attorney's office. They're called county attorneys out there. And when I was hired, there were three of us. And then it became 4 and 5, but I think that's the largest that it ever got.
So you began your practice of law doing criminal prosecution.
Yeah, I really couldn't see myself doing anything other than criminal law. I was pretty bored about the other subjects. I didn't have a lot of interest in anything else but criminal law. So that's the decision that I made. And it was a conscious decision. I knew that there was a direct inverse correlation to how much you get paid and how much fun you have. So in the careers where, you're having a great time, you're enjoying it, it's challenging, you make hardly any money at all. And the careers where you're getting paid a lot of money, but you're basically opening and closing bank accounts, that didn't sound fun at all. So I thought, I could use the money. That would be great. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life regretting having to wake up every day and go into work. So I chose criminal law.
How long did you spend in the county attorney's office there in Dawson?
I was there for 5 years. I was there for 5 years because my husband and I decided we were going to move back to Texas. And so you needed to practice for 5 years before you could waive in, because I wasn't taking that test again.
Hey, I agree with you. That's how I felt at the end of the bar exam too. Is like I must pass because I do not want to do that again. So what brought you back to Texas? Had you been in Texas prior to that?
That's where I was working as a teacher.
Okay. And so you came back to Texas, and where did you settle initially in Texas?
We settled in Round Rock, Texas. We had some friends living there, and my family was down in Corpus Christi, and my husband's family was in Waco. So we thought that was
Yeah, that's pretty good center location for the families, and you're close enough to be there when you want to be, but far enough away where they're not dropping in for dinner every night.
That's right.
That's a great compromise there. And so what did you get into when you first came to Texas? What type of law did you?
I received an offer from the Texas Attorney General's office in criminal prosecutions. They have a division whereby, and almost every state has the same thing, where assistant attorneys general assist district attorneys and county attorneys across the state with cases, either because there's a conflict of interest or because the cases might just be a little too overwhelming for that jurisdiction. And so I accepted that, and I went to work for the AG's office in criminal prosecutions. There was a grant that they had for crimes against children, and that's the section that they put me in.
Wow, now that's a pretty serious topic, crimes against children.
It is.
Yeah.
Handled a lot of it was possession of child pornography, distribution of child pornography, child sexual assaults, continuing sexual assaults.
That's a lot to take on mentally. What was some of the challenges you faced in that position?
I didn't face any challenges as far as subject matter was concerned. I did have a colleague who, I don't have any children, and I didn't at that time either. But I did have a colleague who became pregnant while she was doing that job, and she could no longer do it. I think there is something to be said about that, association. I know a lot of people who have children are not able to do that job. But I didn't have any problems at all. To me, it was just a crime scene, honestly. It was just another crime scene. And I'd seen a lot of crime scenes.
What were some early wins you had when you moved to
Early
Texas?
wins.
Yeah, what are some of the early wins you had?
It's funny because I don't think that I necessarily categorize when you're the prosecutor, they should always be wins because you're the one that brings the case. So if you have the choice whether to bring the case or not. If it's a bad case or you don't believe you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, you have a duty to dump it. And so if you don't win every case that you bring, then you don't have a very good understanding of what's supposed to be tried and what's not supposed to be tried. So as far as wins for me would have to not so much be the defendant was found guilty, because that happened in every case that the defendant was found guilty when I was at the AG's office. Additionally, we had a very small caseload, so I was able to work cases. I had my own investigator. I was able to travel around the state and work up cases for a long time period before actually having to prosecute them. So the wins, they were always wins. One of the funny things that another attorney in another section told me once, he said, all you have to do is show a film or a bunch of horrible videos and then you have an instant win. He says, and he was in the election fraud division, white collar crime. And he's like, we have to work hard on getting all these numbers together and all this paperwork and all this transactional. And he's right. I mean, those are some pretty easy cases to prove up, crimes against children, as far as the child pornography is concerned, because it's all digital. A lot of it's digital. So my wins had more to do with I would call them small wins, in that, I got somebody to testify who wasn't going to testify, or I believed that justice had occurred in some form or fashion, maybe not necessarily with a verdict, but somewhere else. So I really I don't have much to say about wins. My wins are on a much smaller platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think that's what's interesting is that you mentioned that as a prosecutor, your wins aren't necessarily your wins in the courtroom. They're the things that happen in your duty as a prosecutor, because the prosecutor has a different duty than really an attorney in any other position in Texas. Now, I know you're not in the prosecutor's office any longer. You have transitioned to private practice. And so what led you to do that? And what does your practice look like today?
Well, I have to say before I move into private practice that I had an incredible mentor, a couple of them actually, up in Nebraska when I was a county attorney, assistant county attorney. And I handled everything from speeding tickets to serious bodily injury felonies, serious drug offenses. We did it all. We were a small county, but we did it all. And the elected official, her name is Elizabeth Waterman. She's retired, but she was the individual who gave me my grounding as far as my belief system regarding what a prosecutor should do or not do, what's ethical, what's not ethical. She was an incredible and instrumental mover and shaper in my eyes. And so one of the things that she told me was that we represent the entire state of Nebraska, and that includes the defendants as well. When I moved to Texas, I found that wasn't really the philosophy here in Texas. It was much more combative versus necessarily the desiring to seek justice. So that was a culture. That wasn't just one agency. That was just a cultural norm for the state. So that took a little adjusting too. But after 5 years, if you're a prosecutor and you don't want to become an elected official, you're not a politician, then you don't have a lot of places to go. There's not, you kind of hit a ceiling. So most prosecutors will go out on their own. And I was excited to try criminal defense. I thought it would just be arguing the other side of the coin. I was 100% wrong.
Well, tell us how it isn't just arguing the other side of the coin, because I dabble. Compared to you, I dabble in criminal defense. I've been doing it for 20 years. I've been dabbling for 20 years, dipping my toe in, but you have waded into deep waters as a criminal defense attorney. Tell us how it looks differently, why it's not just the other side of the coin.
Well, they have two different jobs, and I think that really defines what they are moving forward. The prosecutor's job is actually to conduct justice. And if the prosecutor believes that justice is not occurring, or that they have a witness that is not believable or credible, or that they suspect that this might not have happened, they have a duty to dismiss the case or resolve the case in a manner that would be justifiable. Now, the defense attorney, on the other hand, their job is zealous advocacy. So their job is within the boundaries and the guidelines of the law to represent their client to the best of their ability. So my job is not justice. I don't need to see that justice is done as a defense attorney. My job is just solid allegiance and for my client. So they're two very distinct and different jobs. And the law professes that when these two powers come together, that the truth comes out somewhere in the middle.
I found that does happen most of the time. Mm-hmm. That the adversarial system really does tend to shed the light, usually. There's exceptions, as we have found out in our career. What does your practice look like in the criminal defense realm?
So in the criminal defense realm, I practice both state and federal criminal defense. I've been doing that for around 13 years or so. I've been an attorney now. I first began practicing law in 2001. So we're now in 2026, so about 25 years. And so for the last 13, I've been a defense attorney. Federal is a very different system than the state system. And those are the two primary fields that I work in, but I also do appeals. So I don't do state appeals, but I do federal appeals. And for the criminal system, that's the defense side of the firm. And then I also do family law, which you are much more adept at than I am. And I've been learning from you. So that's been helpful. But
yeah, our friendship has been really great as you help me become a better criminal defense lawyer and I help you become a better family law attorney. And we don't take cases against each other. So that's
once and we'll never do it again.
Yes, we did it once and then we decided, no, we don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
There's plenty of family law attorneys for us to be able to avoid that in the area. So where do you see your practice moving? Where do you see you as an attorney, not just your practice, but where do you as an attorney see moving ahead in the future besides to
retirement?
Retirement. Yes. Other than retirement, prior to retirement, but before retirement, what do you want to see yourself accomplish as an attorney here in Central Texas in the next few years?
That is a great question. I don't know that I have an answer to that. There are a couple of things I would like to do. I would like to possibly write a book. I've been wanting to write a book for a while based on the cases that I've handled in the past, because there have been quite a few that you just can't make up. People would never believe it unless it actually happened. So I've been thinking about that, and then just growing the firm so that one day I can be of counsel and write more books.
What's your favorite part about being a lawyer?
My favorite part about being a lawyer?
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy the academic rigor. I didn't think I would so much. I am a litigator, so I'm in the courtroom all the time, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see, I started out as a theater major with the scholarship in acting, and you can kind of see there are a lot of attorneys or litigators who came from those basic roots of theater and acting, because it is a stage. It's very much a stage, unfortunately, but it is. And you have to know what to do on that stage in order to persuade whoever it is that you're trying to persuade to vote for your client. But
do you find that it's storytelling, right?
good lawyers are storytellers.
Yeah, and so I was thinking about this as we just went and saw a movie recently that was based on a really great book, and I had read the book two or three times and listened to it on Audible, and I was like, how are they going to put this story into film form? And I was thinking about that as how do you put, what's a 23-hour Audible book? How do you put that into a 2.5-hour movie and still come out with a good story with the main parts of the story intact? And I started thinking about what we do in the courtroom and how we have to be excellent storytellers because we are putting on a performance to show a judge what's happening, especially in family law. There's no way you can tell the judge about every up and down that's gone on in the conflicts and good times and bad times of a marriage or raising children, and then to put that into a form where a decision maker can make a decision, whether that be a judge or a jury. And so I think it's interesting. I think you do a great job as a storyteller. And I think that most good attorneys realize that they have to condense it down to put the story, what's really important, the themes that are important in front of the judge or the jury to make that decision.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And now tie your hands behind your back and try to do that with all of the rules of evidence, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
Not only do you have to provide the fact finder, whether that's the judge or the jury, with an understandable sequence of events and why they occurred, you have to do that while somebody else, an opponent, is trying to keep you from saying that. And you also have to do that by, while using the tools that are available to us versus the tools that are not available or not lawful, with our rules of evidence and various other laws. So that's quite a dance. That is quite a dance for litigators to attempt to communicate that, with their hands basically tied behind their back.
I would venture to say that might be one of your favorite parts, is doing the dance.
I do like the dance.
Yeah.
I'm pretty competitive. I think most litigators are real competitive. I know you're competitive. I went into law school to have a good time because I enjoy the gamesmanship and I enjoy the sport. And it is a sport. I mean, it can be. It doesn't have to be. But for those of us who enjoy the sport of competing, who enjoy the sport of litigation and competition, I get it's hard. It's difficult to explain to anybody how it's a sport, but it absolutely is. Of course, your client's there and you're looking out for the best interests of your client, but I can't control what my clients do or don't do. I can only control the work that I provide them. So we do the best that we can. And if you don't have fun doing it, then you're in the wrong job.
What if you could just give one piece of advice to someone who's considering becoming an attorney? What would that piece of advice be?
Don't do it.
I think that's hilarious. I was told that by multiple law professors before I went to law school when I was exploring it. Yeah, if you can do something else and be happy, do something else.
Yeah, because I have a friend who passed away not too long ago. He was 95 when he passed, and he was a working lawyer up until that point. And he had a phrase that he used to tell me, and that phrase was, "The law is a jealous mistress." And it's so true. The law is a jealous mistress. So, when I'm up till 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. working on getting ready for trial, prepping for a hearing, reading through transcripts, whatever it might be. And I am a perfectionist. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that until I became a lawyer. But I think a lot of us are. It really, it consumes your life. I think I'm going to be sexist here, but I think females spend a lot more time working their cases than the guys. I don't know. I could be completely wrong, guys. So apologize if that's incorrect, but I think the guys have a much better understanding and a better balance of work life than women do. And I don't know why that is, but it's definitely something that we need to work on, because a lot of us spend way too much time with the jealous mistress, right? With the working 3 o'clock in the morning.
So maybe just saying, hey, make sure this is what you absolutely feel like you want to do, and be ready to do the hard work. I don't know many attorneys who are lazy and get anywhere. I can't say I just don't know some who are lazy. I may have met a few who are lazy, but not that really succeed.
I don't know. There's a lot of politicians out there, Cheryl, who are doing quite well and who are lawyers.
Well, I would agree that they're not maybe working law, but I'll tell you what, being a politician is hard work too. It's just a completely different type of work. It is not the work of a lawyer necessarily. Anyway, any parting words you have for anyone who's at the beginning of their law career?
I would say life's short. Do something that you enjoy. If you can make a difference in somebody's life, that's great. If you're doing this because you enjoy the sport, that's great. But you never know what's going to change in your life or your loved ones. And you just need to take every day and live that day to the fullest. And if you love the law, then that's for you. If you want to do other things, then you just have to make those other things happen.
Well, I want to thank you for being my very first guest on the Texas Lawyer Podcast. If you have any questions, make sure to put it in the comment below. I'll try to address those. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'm so happy to have had this time with you, Lisa. Thanks so much.
You bet.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.